Alright, hi guys, my name is Nick Thurston and I'm the creator of the Unity Tween Package. And what the Unity Tween Package is going to let you do is it's going to let you simply and easily create tweens with a component-based system, very similar to NGUI if you ever used that. And you can use it on 2D objects as well as 3D objects. So in this example scene here that I've built that comes with the package itself, when we press play, you'll be able to see that this blue guy over here, this blue square, he's alphaing in and alphaing out on a ping pong basis, and his rotation is going around in a looping basis. You can also make single triggers, obviously. By clicking begin sequence, you can see that this guy has triggered a whole sequence of different events. He's growing in scale, he's changing in color, he's moving in rotation, in position, and if we actually click on begin sequence in the middle of the sequence, you can see that it's actually built to bounce between these two things. And this only took, probably a minute to create. So let's go ahead and dive in here and show you guys how we can actually set these kind of behaviors up. So we're going to have a blank scene here with a blank project that only has the Unity Tween package, so you don't need anything special. If you go into Game Object and then UI and then an image, this will be the guy that we'll work with, and we'll put him up here in the top left-hand corner. Now let's go ahead and go add component. Let's type in tween, and we have a whole bunch of different selections here, but we're going to start with tween transform because I'm going to want to take this guy from the top left all the way down to the bottom right. We're going to go ahead and give this guy a name, tween position example. You don't have to, but just for the sake of organization, I like to do it. We're going to change the my tween type to ping pong. There is, like I said before, single, looping, single and switch, which will trigger the sequence once, and then it'll flip all the values. And then ping pong once if you're feeling saucy. Also featured is a animation curve. This is the default one, which has a nice ease in and ease out. It looks really, really good for menu buttons and UI functions. But obviously, if you're going to do something like looping and you want something to look smooth and not begin and slow in different ways, you'll probably want to switch over to a linear animation curve. For now, we're just going to ping pong between the two things, so I want it to kind of slowly speed up and slowly come to a nice rest. It'll look sharp. We're going to keep the delay at 0 because we don't want to have a delay, but in the case of looping or ping pong, it will happen every single time it triggers in one direction. We can ignore the time scale, but we're going to ignore that. We're going to click play on start, but I'll show you other ways to trigger these sequences and tweens later on. And then what we're actually going to focus on is the starting vector and ending vector fields here. So these two fields are going to basically say where we are tweening between, because tween transform itself is inherited from tween vector, so it's moving between two vector points. And the tween transform property is what actually tells it what we're tweening between. So if we go position, we're going to tween between position. If we do scale, scale, and rotation, obviously is the rotation. If we have position on, and then we go to copy transform to, we can actually put this square here wherever we want, and then when we're happy with it, and we say, okay, I want it to start from there, we can go to copy transform to, and then starting vector, and that'll self-populate where we're actually at. If we go down to local position, and then we do the same thing again, you can see that even though it's in the same point, the local position and the actual position are very different values. And depending on what this guy actually is, when you click on copy transform, it's going to copy the relevant things over. So it will accurately, use rotation when needed. It will use scale when needed. And then, just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and take this guy, we're going to move him over, and we're going to say, yeah, let's make that our ending vector. So I click on ending vector, and now it has two vector 3s to tween between, and then it's going to, as soon as we press play, automatically trigger. And that's obviously really fast because our duration is only 1. So we're going to go ahead and move that up to like 2, just for the hell of it. And now we're probably going to want to actually reset this guy because he's in the bottom right hand corner, and that sort of bothers me because he starts in the top left, right? So let's actually go to set transform to, and if we click on that, we can actually set it to the beginning vector. Now we can at any point kind of say, oh, I don't really remember where the ending vector was at, and we can switch between the two and actually see where the two positions are. You might have also noticed that there's this thing called default vector down here, and then there's also a show default vector button down in the bottom right hand corner. And if we click on that, we'll actually enable the use of a default vector, and it'll actually open up this field so that way you can copy and paste it in. And a default vector is basically used for whenever you want to open and close something in one direction, but you want it to start somewhere in between the first time. So if you have a door that's slightly ajar or a shelf that's slightly opened, but you want it to fully close and fully open when the user interacts with it, you would use this default vector. I'm going to go ahead and hide it though, because for this example, I don't really need it. Now if I also wanted to do something like tween its alpha in and out, say, I can go ahead and click on, let's do looping this time. So tween alpha example. And let's go ahead and make the duration 1, so it's just going to be a little bit faster than actually moving here. And it's going to go between 1 and 0, and we're going to click play on start. So now again, when I start the game, it's going to, as you can see, pulse the alpha, and it's going to keep moving them over and over. And this is really cool because the tween alpha is a pretty generic component, and a lot of these things are generic components where it'll grab all the relevant components that it thinks would be necessary, and it'll actually carry out actions on the correct thing. So you can see here that we have an image component that actually would control this. But if we actually add, say, a canvas group and we had multiple images underneath of this, now when we press play, the same action is happening. You can see it alphaing in and out, but it's actually influencing the canvas group, and the image itself is not changing. And that is because it knows that this canvas group is also going to influence all image buttons underneath of it. So basically, if you ever want to have, say, a 3D object change color, it's going to try to find its mesh renderer. And it's always going to know what it's looking for and what you want out of it. But obviously, in games, when you're triggering a button and you're trying to do something, it always has to have an action. It's not always on start. So what I like to do is I like to essentially have these guys play on start and check them off, because we're really only using play on start to actually visually see the change in game. What we're going to do now is we're going to make a tween sequence. And a tween sequence has a list of other tween sequences. And we're going to be able to take these tween guys and we're going to click and drag them in. We're going to go ahead and make this tween sequence itself go all the way up to the top. And when I'm happy with these, I'm just going to minimize them. And now you can also test the sequence on start. So even though the other guys are off, you can see that it has the same behavior. But I'm going to go ahead and say tween trigger, or tween sequence example. It's probably a better name. And now, since it's on start and you press play, it's not going to happen. So if I go back up to game object, I go to UI, and I go to button, you can see I've made this button. I'm going to go ahead and center it, change the text really quick to begin sequence. And now, using Unity's default UI interface system, we can go ahead to this on click, press start, or add, and we're going to take the image itself, we're going to drag it in here, and now under our tween sequence, we will basically invoke it by calling start or begin sequence. So now when I actually click on this guy, it will actually start it right away. Awesome. Oops, and I spelled beginning wrong. Yeah, let's just do begin. Alright, anyway. So yeah, if you actually went ahead and you took a 3D object, like a cube, for instance. Let's make our cube kind of big here. Take our main camera and let's actually move this cube down to the camera. So now our cube can be seen by our camera. If we wanted to, change the color of the cube, tween color, let's make it go from white to red. Let's make it also ping pong, and let's make that happen over 1 second. now when we press play, and we have play on start going, you can see that it's actually going to find the render, and it's going to change between white and red, just like I said. And again, we could take this tween color from this cube, and we could actually make it a part of the sequence. So if we had, say, that sequence that we were happy with, and for some reason we wanted to make it be influenced by our 3D cube, we could go ahead and lock one inspector, open up a different inspector, take this tween color, throw it into the tween sequence itself, and now it won't actually start on its own, but when I press begin sequence, just like the button itself here, you can see that it's actually influencing the color of the model itself. So these are just a couple of things that you can actually do with the Unity Tween package. Things that I didn't show you are, tween value, where you can take two different float values. Maybe you want to, influence your AI or some kind of a trap, then it needs to know some kind of a float value that you want to use. You could do that. The tween base is an inherited. It's kind of the father of all the rest of them, and the tween sequence itself, like I showed you before, is just a group of other tweens. So the system is fairly powerful. It's not quite as powerful as the Unity animation system, but again, that Unity animation system is very specific to one button or a series of buttons that are meant to be basically the same thing. If you want to go ahead and have something that is component driven, where you can just attach something onto any menu and scale it up or scale it down, or kind of move it in from the side of the screen while also alphaing it in, it's a very, very easy to use, very flexible system that I hope you all enjoy. All right, awesome. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys will enjoy the Unity Tweener system. Thanks.